Steve here. It's the show where I answer your questions, and this week my first question comes from Matt Machado, who says, "Hi Steve, sorry about my dog bugging you. She likes to go on social media and beg. Anyway, my question is, what do you think of the idea of the regressive left? It's mostly used as an insult, but it supposedly refers to a real problem within the left. Do you think the term, as it was originally defined, has any validity?" No, not really. But I will expand on that answer. Um, there is, I think, a small element of the left that do the sorts of things that Majid Nawaz was talking about when he coined the term regressive left. Um, People who are maybe a little too willing to overlook intolerance in the name of tolerance, who are motivated by very, very noble goals like pluralism, like tolerance, and for that reason, they're willing to maybe sort of look away from, say, the authoritarian excesses of some Islamic countries in the Muslim world. But I don't think that it is nearly as big of a problem as people like to say it is, people who frequently use the term. And now I think it has become basically another way, it's being used very similarly to the way people on the right use the term politically correct. It's basically just a snarl word that you can use to insult someone who has either said something that you don't like or has said that they don't like something that you said. Terry Williams, hey Steve, long time, no question. Here's one. Now that President Orange didn't completely divest his businesses or put them in a blind trust, there have been ethics lawyers from both sides of the political aisle saying that Trump is in violation of the emoluments clause of the Constitution. So, what are the odds you put on Trump being impeached by this time next year? My early bet is around 35%. I am not that optimistic. I honestly don't think he's going to be impeached. I think if we want to get rid of him before he is term limited, then we need to vote him out in 4 years. I fully expect and am planning on him still being in office come the next presidential election. Because here's the thing, unless the caveat to that would be if the midterm elections swing just wildly in favor of the Democrats. If that happens, like the Democrats pick up every available seat in the Senate and they pick up a massive amount in the House. But unless something like that happens, no, the Republicans aren't going to impeach Trump. Even it's difficult for me to imagine what kind of violation, even if he is clearly in violation of the Constitution, the Republicans in Congress still have to impeach him, and they're not going to fucking impeach him. They have fallen in line with a few exceptions, and the exceptions are people like John McCain, who has basically just meekly protested. He hasn't actually done anything. He's made some noises that he's not happy with some of the things Trump is doing, but he hasn't actually fucking done anything. The Republicans aren't going to do anything to stop Trump. He's doing things that they want to do. What possible complaint could they have? He's going to fuck the poor. He's going to fuck immigrants. He's going to fuck women and people of color. He's going to fuck people out of their reproductive rights. He's going to fuck people out of their health care while cutting taxes on the rich. He's going to fuck up our trade agreements. He's going to fuck up our standing in the world. He's going to empower white supremacists even more than he already has. He's going to do all the shit that Republicans have always secretly wanted to do, and maybe not so secretly, for decades. It's impossible for me to imagine what he could do that would make them want to impeach him, unless he signed like some progressive policy into law. Maybe if he decided he didn't want to repeal the Affordable Care Act after all, maybe that would be enough to get them to want to impeach him. They would come up with some constitutional violation out of that, and they would say, oh, we got to get rid of this guy. That's the only thing I can think. No, do not count on the Republicans in Congress to impeach Trump. They are not his enemy. They are his enablers. Dr. Babylon, hi Steve. Are there any promises Donald Trump has made that you wish he was serious about keeping? Are there any promises you don't want Donald Trump to keep but you're not concerned about because you don't think he was being serious? As to the second part of that question, no, especially after this week when he has signed this flurry of executive orders, and beyond the ones that he has actually signed, there are also reports in the media from anonymous White House sources that there are drafts being worked on for future, soon to come executive orders that are arguably even worse. I mean, he's going forward with his immigration policies, his demented racist immigration policies, including wanting to ban Muslims and ban refugees from the wrong countries. He's cutting off funding for abortions. He's essentially implementing gag orders on federal agencies, forcing them to withhold information from the public until it can be politically approved by people within the administration. He's doing all of the authoritarian fascist things, or at least showing that he intends to do those things that he said during the campaign. So I think he intends to keep his awful promises. As for promises he made that I wish he would keep, I mean, the only promises that he made that could be charitably interpreted as good are the ones that are so vague that they're basically fucking worthless. Like, we're going to bring back jobs. What the fuck does that mean? He doesn't have a plan. He doesn't have any idea. He hasn't told us in any specific sense how he intends to bring back jobs. He just says, we're going to bring back the jobs. Okay. Existential anarchist. Hi, Steve. Did you have close friends who happened to be new atheist, anti-feminist in real life when you explicitly embraced feminism? If there was, how did they react to that? In terms of like just people that I know in my everyday life offline that I interact with a lot, none of them are really active atheists, and none of them are anti-feminist, because if they were, they wouldn't have been my friends in the first place. Because even though my commitment to feminism and my outspoken support for feminism has grown in the last 5 or 6 years or so, I have never been particularly tolerant of sexism, misogyny, what have you, when I saw it in other people. I've always been grossed out by that. I've always been offended by that. And if there was someone that I knew in my life who was the type of person that used to be called a sexist pig or a chauvinist, I didn't want to hang around that person. I always thought people like that were assholes. So I didn't have, regardless of whether they were an atheist or had a religious faith or whatever, anti-feminists, people that I would now describe as anti-feminist or sexists, misogynists, they've never been people that I wanted to have as my friends. So no. Short answer to your question is no. There were no in real life friendships of mine that were negatively affected by me becoming a more outspoken supporter of feminism, because I've never wished to be friends with such people. NYC guy. Hi, Steve. In politics, some of us like to assume that people are rational. However, there is a lot of new research coming out that disputes this idea. Some scientists say we are not as rational as we think. We are emotional, biased, and prejudiced. We use the newest part of our rational brain, the prefrontal cortex, to justify our feelings. Many conservatives and right-wing types claim they are more logical and use more logical appeals. We know, based on this election, that the appeals used were based in fear, bias, stereotypes, and racism. My question is this: how do you use logic and rhetoric to persuade a group of people who make decisions that are driven by their lizard emotional brains? I think if you want to have any chance, you need to engage them at that level. If you see that they are responding primarily to emotional arguments, then I think you need to craft an emotional argument that will reach them. The example you give of people on the right who say, oh, we're the more rational ones. We're the ones that look at logic and evidence. And these liberals, these bleeding heart liberals over here, they're just easily swayed by their feelings. But we're the more rational ones. And clearly that's not true, because there were no rational arguments in Donald Trump's campaign, and yet Donald Trump won the Republican vote handily. So that's the kind of argument that they respond to. Therefore, that's how you have to reach them. Now, they respond really well to racism and xenophobia and sexism. You don't want to appeal to that, but you can, I think, appeal to their emotions. You can craft arguments in ways that touch them personally, that show them how, for instance, the policies of someone like Donald Trump would negatively affect them or people like them or their family. You can ask them what their priorities are. You can say, what's important to you? Why would you vote for a particular candidate? And then you can show them why, a given issue is more readily addressed or is better addressed by candidates on the left and the right. You can try that if reason won't work, and it probably won't. Secular scholar. Hey, Steve. I've seen many exchanges between creationists and, how should I put this, those who actually do research. And when creationists state that the other side believes in chance, there's usually a reaction of, no, I don't. But in truth, don't we? I mean, not absurd chance. We shouldn't expect cats giving birth to elephants or planets full of only Charlie Chaplins, but chance within parameters. One of natural history's most notable events, the extinction of the non-avian dinosaurs, was at least catalyzed by the chance encounter with a huge asteroid. And while the question of what sets the parameters is itself chance with parameters, which does lead to an infinite regress, shouldn't we cop to the fact that while not everything is chance, yeah, we do believe that chance, luck, accidents, roll of the dice, flip of the coin within parameters is what we believe does determine at least some of how we got to be the way we are and why we're here? Yes, I think we should, and it's a really good point. And to be fair, I have heard scientists acknowledge that. They don't spend a lot of time on it, but I have heard many science communicators, including Carl Sagan, including Richard Dawkins, when they've been talking about evolutionary biology, acknowledge that chance does play a very important role. I think one of the reasons why creationists talk about the role that chance plays in atheistic or non-theistic models of the universe so often is because they're appealing to an insecurity in their presumably mostly theistic audience. The idea for a lot of people that a great deal of our lives and ourselves and the world we live in and the people we are is determined by random chance is very uncomfortable to a lot of people. People like to feel like they're more in control, or that at least somebody's in control. And the notion that there is no conscious will controlling everything is very uncomfortable and even upsetting to some people. So creationists attack that. They appeal to that to make their case seem stronger. And I think we need to show that, this is just a fact of life. We need to acknowledge it. We need to say, look, this is a very important part of the way the universe works. John Brockman. Steve, two things. One, how was the march? Two, something I've been pondering for a while now, given some psychological hypotheses about God belief. Might some people be atheist because they're not good at considering the emotions, needs, desires of others? And might that decreased, not absent empathy help explain the racism, misogyny so rampant in our would-be community? As to number one, the march was awesome. As I said in my video about it, which if you haven't watched yet is on my channel elsewhere. It's called Reflections on the Women's March on Washington, and it was amazing. It was one of the best days of my life. As for number two in your question, I don't know if I see a causal link between reduced empathy and atheism, but I do think that it's not an unreasonable assumption to say that decreased empathy, for whatever reason, would contribute to the racism and misogyny that is so prevalent in the community. Because I think lack of empathy is something that enables racism, misogyny, just intolerance in general, the inability to care about or project yourself into the shoes of a person who has had a very different experience than you. And the unwillingness or the inability to accept their experience as just as valid as yours. That's a big problem, and that really exacerbates racism and all forms of prejudice and bias that we all feel, that we all experience from time to time. It's just a lot more, it takes root a lot more strongly in some of us than others. And I think empathy plays a large part in that. Adam Rainstopper didn't work, buy, sell, or even drive today. My girlfriend did. She is a social worker, which makes it even more ironic. I'm kind of upset with her for not striking today. Am I out of line? And Adam, I believe, is referring to the J20 strike, the suggestion that people go on strike on Inauguration Day. I mean, clearly it was very important to you, and your girlfriend, for whatever reason, chose not to do that. So, I mean, I don't think you're out of line for being upset with her. She had her reasons, I'm sure, for not honoring the strike. You had your reasons for thinking it was incredibly important and striking on January 20th. I mean, as an outsider, as a third party, I can respect you both. I don't know what your girlfriend's situation is. Maybe she felt like she had to work. Maybe you said she's a social worker. Maybe there were people at her job, at her office, clients that she was meeting that day, people whose cases she was working on, that she felt needed her. And she felt like her energy would be better spent going to work and helping those people than by striking. And you take the opposite view. And you say, maybe you think, well, what about the long term? What about making a statement against tyranny? What about making a statement against fascism? What about telling Trump and his supporters that we will not stand for this, that they will not be able to push us around, that they need us more than we need them, and that we are capable of taking charge of this situation? I mean, I completely understand why you would be sore at her. I don't think you're being unreasonable. But, I can see her side of it as well. Am I being too indecisive? I think sometimes I'm accused of doing that. I apologize. I'll tell you what, I'll be decisive. I'll be decisive right now. It's the end of the first round of the video, and it's time for the second round, which is a little something I like to call
the lightning round.
Was that decisive enough for you? I said it and it happened. I gave the order and here we are, lightning round. I should probably just stop fucking around and get to answering the questions, because that's actually the point of the whole thing. Corey Donaldson, what do you think of the term manly tears? I think it's silly, for one thing, and besides, whenever a woman cries, no one ever calls them womanly tears. No, in fact, I've heard womanly tears used much more often to disparage men when they cry. He cries like a woman, He cried womanly tears, like he's supposed to be ashamed for crying the wrong way. Yeah, you're right. It's silly and it's sexist, and it's just another one of those little ways in everyday life that we reinforce these very harmful gender stereotypes. Well, men aren't supposed to cry. Well, okay, maybe men can cry if they cry the right way, then it's manly. You're absolutely right. It's silly, and it's worse than silly. It's toxic. It's the sort of thing that we just should stop thinking that way. We just should stop thinking that way. It doesn't do anybody any good. Harry Ray, here in Australia, we are experiencing a real surge in women's sport. National leagues for Australian rules football, soccer, and cricket are all booming and getting media attention. Do you think that mainstreaming women's sport can help with equality? And would you consider watching, say, women's baseball? The answer to both questions is yes, a very big yes. I do think that women's sport and supporting it can help with equality. I think, for one thing, representation. Visibility matters. Representation is important. If you see yourself represented in the media, if you see yourself represented in your culture, if you see yourself represented in popular sports, then you exist. You matter. You feel as though you are a part of your culture. You are a part of your community. And yeah, I think sport can play a huge role in that. And I think it's very important that women see that sports are an arena that is open to them, that it is not just a guy thing, that it can be a woman's thing as well. And I would bloody love for there to be women's professional baseball in a big way, like a professional women's baseball league. I would support it. If there were a team near me, I would go to games. I would love it. And I would hope that eventually it would lead to gender integrated baseball, where women and men play in the same league. I think that would be awesome. I think that would be really awesome. So yes, I think women being in sports and women's sports being successful can be a big help in equality. Absolutely. And I think it's great that that's happening in Australia. I didn't actually know that. I think that's awesome. Cranes, not skyhooks. Hey Steve, did you ever get around to watching The Amazing Spider-Man 2? I wouldn't blame you if you haven't. It was terrible. I haven't. I have not. I have never gotten around to see it. I'm sorry. Although I guess I'm not sorry, because you think that it sucks. I know. I haven't gotten around to see it. Radical Bacon, did you pet the cat on Inauguration Day? Is that a euphemism? Are you asking if I literally pet my cat, or is that like is that referring to something else? Either way, the answer is yes. Justin Parallax, lightning round question. Steve, I'm brewing another batch of mead this year, and it's going to be apple and cinnamon flavor. What should the next batch be? Maple and brown sugar. I know absolutely nothing about mead, but I just picked my favorite oatmeal flavor. So if you do that and it turns out terribly, you can blame me, because I'm just talking out of my ass. I don't know from mead. But yeah, sure, go for it. Lucas Hackett, Cartoon Carnage Wrestling. Yo, Steve, are you going to check out that Power Rangers movie coming out this March? I've seen the trailer, and I have to say that it looks very promising and very edgy compared to the original 1993 rendition. The only reason why I plan to watch it is for Elizabeth Banks as Rita Repulsa, which I believe is going to steal the entire movie. Your thoughts? P.S. Just figured I'd ask this, but which pairing from the show do you prefer? Kimberly and Jason or Kimberly and Tommy? P.P.S. Jason David Frank for President 2020. Go Hogs. Yeah, I saw the trailer. It looks, I remember Power Rangers from when I was a kid, so I guess it does sort of evoke a little bit of nostalgia in me. I was never like a huge Power Ranger fan, but I watched it when it was on. I watched the original series. I never got into any of the sequels and spin-offs and everything. I don't know if I'm going to see it. I probably won't see it. I might catch it like in a year when it's on Netflix or something, but I probably won't see it in the theater. But Kimberly and Jason or Kimberly and Tommy, I would say Kimberly and Jason. I'm more of a Pink Ranger, Red Ranger shipper than a Pink Ranger, Green Ranger shipper, Green Ranger / White Ranger. Nothing against Tommy. I thought Tommy was cool, but I guess I'm an originalist when it comes to Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. I'm an originalist. I like the original team before Tommy came along. I like the Red Ranger. To me, the Red Ranger is always the leader, and I like, if I'm going to hook up two of them, I would rather see Kimberly and Jason together than Kimberly and Tom. That's just me. That's just me. Malevolent Divinity. Do you think the concept of religion ever looks at various atheist anti-feminists and yells out of sheer confusion, "Is this what you left me for?" Yeah, absolutely. The concept of religion looks at popular anti-feminist atheists and goes, "What? You want to treat women like garbage? I got you covered." What the? Where'd you go? I treat women like garbage. You treat women like garbage. Why can't we get it along here, man? I give people a smug sense of superiority. You have a smug sense of superiority. Both of them are completely unearned. Why can't we be friends? Yeah, I think that's absolutely something that would happen if religion were a conscious entity. Ohoyerno, is Trump the most American president ever or the least American? Trump is the most American in all of the very, very worst ways, and he is by far the least American in the best ways. He takes all of the absolutely awful, toxic, terrible things about American culture that we should be trying to get rid of, and he just embodies those robustly, and then all of the good stuff is essentially absent. So yes, the answer is yes. He is both the best and the most and the least. Kevin Logan, so I saw that you met up with Christy Winters at the Women's March on Washington. Is she as awesome in person as she is on her channel? Because if so, she's fucking awesome. Yeah, Christy is awesome. Let's indulge in our Christy Winters admiration society for a moment, shall we, Kevin? Yeah, Christy is a really awesome person. I actually got to hang out with her for significant portions of 2 days because we met the day before Inauguration Day and hung out and spent most of the day together in D.C., and it was just wonderful. And then, of course, the day of the Women's March, we were together all day. We were together at the march all day and a little bit afterwards. And yeah, Christy's awesome. Christy's awesome. I was so happy that we got to spend as much time together as we did. Yeah, she's great. If you ever get the chance to hang out with Christy Winters in person, definitely do it. I highly recommend it. Hey, that's it for the questions. That's it for the lightning round. I want to go now to the shout out, and one of my friends, Makaya, actually suggested that I mention two other very important organizations that also help women who want to get abortions, or help to make it easier for women who need abortions to access that service, because it has been so obstructed by Republican policies these last few years, and that is probably only going to get worse in the next few years. So the two organizations, in addition to Planned Parenthood, that I am giving my shout out to this week are the National Network of Abortion Funds and the Lilith Fund. And they both do very similar work. They both essentially involve themselves in making it easier and more affordable for people who want abortions to get abortions. And the Lilith Fund in particular is focused on people in Texas. Texas has some very restrictive abortion laws. Texas makes it far, far more difficult than it needs to be for women in that state to exercise their constitutional right to have an abortion, to end their pregnancy if they so choose. And the Lilith Fund is dedicated to pushing back against that and to making it as easy and accessible as possible for people in Texas who want abortions to get abortions. If you have suggestions for a charity, for an activist group, for something like this, it doesn't have to be specifically like a women's rights thing. It can be any kind of progressive social justice cause, racial justice, economic justice, environmentalism, any sort of cause for something that is going to be threatened, that is going to be imperiled in the next 4 years by the Trump administration. An organization that you think I should be sort of raising an alarm for and bringing more attention to and using. I don't have a very big platform here, but I have what I have, and I am happy to use some of it to sort of push people to support these organizations. So if you have an organization in particular that you think is worth supporting and worth giving a hand to during the Trump administration, please do leave a comment or contact me in some other way and suggest it, because I would be very happy to give shout outs to other organizations like these, because I think it is so very important. We all have to do our part to fight for these rights and these things that we are in danger of losing in the next few years. So that's the shout out. The National Network of Abortion Funds and Lilith Fund. Please do support those if you can and if you want to. I also want to remind you, in a much less important vein, but nonetheless, hopefully something that will give you some entertainment and some enjoyment, to please, if you're not already doing so, check out the Let Me Listen family of podcasts. These are podcasts that are created by my very good friend Jason Harding, aka Jason with a D, the puppet master of Opinionville, and one of my very good friends. There is a whole series of Let Me Listen podcasts. Of course, there is Let Me Finish, which is the original, which is co-hosted by Jason and Finite Atticus. There is American Monsters and How to Destroy Them, the wonderful improv comedy podcast. There is Filmtastic Voyage, hosted by Mike and Alex. There is Cinetific, the movie science podcast, which is co-hosted by Professor Jason and Professor Aaron. And of course, last but not least, there is Late Seating, the movie review podcast, co-hosted by Jason and me, where we take a classic movie, a movie that has a reputation for either being great or being notoriously terrible. We give it a fresh review. We decide whether or not it lives up to that reputation, and we make fun of it for your entertainment. And it's just a really wonderful show. It's so much fun to do. It's a lot of fun to listen to. If you have never checked out Late Seating, I highly recommend that you check it out. Our most recent episode, which went up last week, is about the classic political thriller, The Manchurian Candidate. Our next review, which will go up next week, will be about the classic American musical, Singin' in the Rain. So if you want to get all the jokes and you're planning on listening to our next episode of Late Seating, maybe check out Singin' in the Rain between now and then, because that's going to be the subject of our next review. So you can listen to the most recent episode of Late Seating, all of the past episodes of Late Seating, and all of the episodes of all of the excellent Let Me Listen podcasts by going to letmelistenpodcast.com. And if you do, I don't think you'll be sorry. Anyway, that's it for me, everybody. I am out of here. I want to thank you, as always, for your questions. Please do leave a comment on this video asking me your question for next time. You can ask me anything about anything. Nothing is too serious. Nothing is too silly. I will answer as many of your questions as I possibly can in the next video. So until then, take care, everybody. Hey folks, one more thing before I go. I want to thank you again for watching this video and say that if you enjoyed it, if you got something out of it, please do like, share, and subscribe. And also, please consider supporting this channel through Patreon. You can go to patreon.com and help me continue to make more videos like this by contributing to my Patreon campaign for as little as $1 a month. afford it and you can pledge a little bit more than $1, there are some extra perks when you get up to the $5 or the $10 or the $20. So consider supporting the Patreon campaign if you like what I do and you get something out of it. Thank you again so very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.